This is the Kojima Productions Report with your host Ryan Payton, here for another edition of the Best of the K3 Report, which is basically a collage of some of my favorite moments of the show that we've recorded in the past 2 years. So what I'm going to do again is focus on some of my favorite interviews that we've done with some of the biggest names in the Metal Gear universe and in the game industry as a whole. And to kick it off is going to be an interview I did way back in July of 2006 with Masahiro Sakurai, who is the big man behind Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which is coming out on Wii early next year or early 2008. And so we had a really good talk about the inclusion of Solid Snake in his game, how that came to be, and also I was able to ask him some questions I've had for such a long time, because he's kind of like he's kind of got a nomadic relationship with a lot of developers, where he'll show up and do a project and move on to a different developer and lead another project. And so I asked him about how does that work in the creative process, joining a new team every time you do a new project. So he had some pretty interesting answers for that. So to kick off this best of edition of the Kojima Productions Report, we've got an interview with Mr. Sakurai. Check it out. So we don't want to keep the listeners waiting too long, because we have this special interview with Mr. Masahiro Sakurai.
Oh, I'm a great fan of Mr. Sakurai, actually.
He has quite the catalog of hits that he's made over the years. He's done a lot of Kirby titles.
Yes.
Smash Brothers, Super Smash Brothers, one of the best-selling games of all time. Mm-hmm. Best-selling game on GameCube. Mm-hmm. And Meteos for Nintendo DS. I mean, he's all over the place. And just the recently announced Revolution Super Smash Brothers. So, yeah, we're very lucky to have him in the studio.
Okay.
And very lucky to have you, Mr. Saito, to come in and record his voiceover.
Yeah, I met him a couple of times.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
And very well-spoken.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Let's give it a try then.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm here with a special guest today. It's Mr. Sakurai from his own independent studio, but he's working with Nintendo on a very special project, which they announced at E3. And he's joining us in the studio today. He made a visit to Mr. Kojima, and they had a good talk over on the Japanese side at HIDECHAN. And Mr. Sakurai took a look at our new trailer, MGS4 trailer. So I'm going to go into Japanese right now. We're going to put the English overdubs over. So yeah, let's go into Japanese, and I'll ask Mr. Sakurai a few questions. So, じゃあ、日本語に入りましょう。はい。You have a new game that you're announcing at E3, a new Smash Brothers game, and you have another announcement that there's a brand new character joining the Smash Brothers ensemble of crazy characters, and that is Snake from the Metal Gear Solid series.
The story began when Kojima asked me if Snake could appear in, Smash Brothers. Since I, left the company, I never thought that I was going to make another Smash Brothers at that time. But then, things changed, and, Mr. Iwata of Nintendo kind of asked me to create the next Smash Brothers. And I said, yeah, that's fine. And then I remember that Mr. Kojima asked me if Snake could, appear. And then I thought, wow, okay, this is a good chance. Maybe I should just ask again to Mr. Kojima. And that's how this whole story began.
So tell me the truth, Mr. Sakurai, is Snake can be really powerful this time around?
Yeah, Snake is going to be a very strong character because, the image of, Snake in the first place, he's not the kind of character that flies around in the air, is he? So I am thinking of making Snake, use guns and special weapons and bombs and that kind of thing, but he will be strong.
Well, you kind of hinted at this previously, but can you explain to the listeners what it's like to be a freelance game designer compared to in-house game designer?
Well, freedom is really great. I enjoy this freedom of the situation I'm in right now. When you work in a company, when you create like Kirby, there's going to be something after Kirby. When you create Smash Brothers, there's always going to be something lined up, the next Smash Brothers or whatever. And then you have to, work with the same staff or the staffs that, new staffs, but the staffs that you haven't picked or something. Meaning it goes into this bad spiral of just doing work. But, being a total, freelance is that, of course, you end up with the responsibility. So you have to select who you work with, all the people, and what you want to work with. But I really enjoy this freedom, actually.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But on the other hand, there must be some advantages to always staying in the same studio with the same team. For example, you know who is very good at their job, or you know who's kind of a troublesome coworker. And when you enter that new team, do you find that it takes a little while to find out, who's really capable and who's like one of those troublemakers? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, there are points that you said, actually. When you're free, when you're doing work for free, freelance, you have to understand that there always will be advantages and disadvantages. And the point you picked out is definitely a disadvantage, actually. But if you understand that there is this disadvantage versus this advantage, it works fun.
Well, it does seem very fun to be kind of independent game designer. And it also opens up opportunities to do work with a variety of very famous studios and very famous game creators. For example, doing work with Nintendo on this new title, or working with Q Entertainment on titles like Meteos. So yeah, it seems like a great opportunity for you. And if you don't mind, I kind of want to jump into the next question. But you just recently saw the MGS4 trailer that we're showing at E3. And can you just give us a little bit of your impressions, what you thought of the trailer?
It's difficult to explain. Kind of sorrowful. Another point was, of course, Raiden. My impression was like, Raiden became like that. That was really the two things I felt when I saw that trailer.
Well, I think it's safe to say that all the games that you have designed up until now have been very colorful, with lots of colorful characters, colorful environments, lots of colorful icons. When you look at a game like Metal Gear, do you ever have that kind of feeling that you want to try something a little bit more realistic, a little bit more gritty?
Yes. I always kind of, feel like creating different types of games, actually always. But, this is a difficult point, but I think everyone has a different role to play. I have a role of creating what I create. And the important thing is not to envy the people who create something different from yourself, but you have to think what's really appreciated by the audience, and you have the responsibility to create that. For example, people who create documentary on TV programs or kids programs, I think not all the people who create documentary loves documentary or to watch documentary. I think these two are totally different. You have to, split yourself differently. The part where you enjoy and the part you create, it's totally different. So you have to think differently.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. That's a really good answer, actually. Well, before we close out here, is there anything you want to tell to all the English-speaking listeners out there?
Since Snake will be in Smash Brothers, I'm going to be making new stages for him to have fun in the game. So I would like all the listeners to look out for the new Smash Brothers.
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
So moving on to another huge creative force in the video game industry. It's an interview that I took with Yoji Shinkawa, who's a creative director behind Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, Yoji does a great interview because he gives you really thoughtful answers, and it didn't hurt having Aki in the room as well to kind of guide the interview and really do a great translation. So thank you, Aki, for doing that. And so this was recorded way back in February 2007, right on the eve of the Super Bowl, actually. And so as we move forward with moving into 2008 with the Super Bowl coming up, Ken and we had this idea that we should call Yoji back into the studio and record another Super Bowl themed Kojima Productions Report, because Yoji is one of the few Japanese guys who's interested in American football. So it'd be fun to get him in the booth and have him talk about his favorite teams. But it might be tough because February 2008 is going to be a very busy time for us. And so we'll see what happens. But so let me just kick off this interview that I did with Yoji Shinkawa, asking him about actually asking him questions that you guys submitted. So without further ado, let's hear what Yoji has to say. And I asked Mr. Shinkawa, a lot of new trailers will come out. Is there anything that you find interesting? And the subject of BioShock came up. And then he had a very interesting comment about BioShock.
BioShock? 前飛行機の中でライアンと話した時になんかトレーラー面白いのありましたって言ったらバイオショックっていう話をしたんですけど、そこら辺ちょっとどういう話したか教えて。Well, BioShock was really kind of surprising for me because I thought, oh, can it go this far? And actually, I haven't seen any update after that. That recalls that, I like Assassin's trailer as well. That,
Oh yeah, Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed. That looks quite interesting.
Well, I remember the reason I was so shocked is because, well, shock is not the greatest word, but it seemed like we finally had this connection. We had BioShock. We've both seen the trailer. And then he said, well, yeah, it looks cool, but that's not a world I would want to go into. And I've been thinking about that ever since. Every time I see BioShock now, I think about his comment. And that's a very interesting idea, a very interesting way to look at that game.
なんかライアンがもう印象的だったのが、シンカーさんとバイオショックの話した時に、シンカーさんが、でも俺世界に入りたくはないねって言ったのをすごい覚えてて、そういう見方もあるんだっていうか、そういう考え方もあるんだって、そのバイオショックを今でもこう見るたびに、それを思い出すと言ってます。
そうですね。僕のゲーム
The way I think about games as a creator is how much you can make the players go into that world is how I, basically think. In Japan right now, there are a lot of hit titles which are like, easy pick up and play games like the puzzle games or the brain age type. Well, that's games as well. But for me, games is how much you could get the users in it. And looking at BioShock, I just automatically thought that I can't go into that world because it's so frightening.
I mean, this is kind of the games I'm interested in too. Is I have a friend who's really into these Mudio games, these free games on the internet, and she plays these, and that's the kind of game that she's into. But I don't know. I feel very lucky to be in the studio because the world of Metal Gear is so deep in this narrative, and that's what interests me. And I think maybe we have that same kind of connection, Shinkawa and I, to kind of shift gears over into the more of Metal Gear world. And if you can't talk about this, I know this is Metal Gear Solid 4 related. A guy from China, I can't really pronounce his screen name. It's got a bunch of numbers and letters in it, but he wants to know how's the process going of like redesigning or bringing about these old characters like Meryl into a game into a system like PS3 where the polygon models, I don't know how many hundreds of times more detailed.
Yeah.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about that process about bringing old characters back to life into the new generation?
リスナーの質問の中国の方なんで、メリルとか要は昔のキャラをこの PS3 っていう新しいそのもう何十倍何百倍のポリゴンで綺麗に描けるじゃないですか、PS3 でそういうキャラクターたちがこう戻ってくるっていうそのそれに対する何ていうんですか感覚っていうか感想っていうか進行っていうか、どんな感じなんでしょうか。
そうですね。イメージっていうのが
First of all, it was very interesting to know actually even within the staffs that there's a whole different perception among people. Like say Meryl, I had this image, but when we tried to bring this up to PS3, it turned out that other people's image is totally different. At that time, Meryl, for example, again, we had only the 16 dot or maybe 32 dot one texture. That's it. No facial expressions but still at that time, she was, you could tell that she was crying or angry or that kind of thing. Now with the PS3, we have to draw everything, the facial expressions and everything. So it's quite difficult to even set or match the image amongst the staffs. And also, technical-wise, we have to upgrade this to PS3 standard. So it's a hell of a lot of tasks that we have to do right now.
そういった意味も含めて大変だなと思ってますね。
So yeah, I can tell that going from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 3 is a huge jump because for MGS1, the characters weren't detailed.
Yeah.
But how about moving from MGS2 to MGS4? Because the polygon count it's not the same, but I mean it's closer to in terms of hardware and can you talk about that process at all? Is it difficult? I guess what I'm trying to say is for MGS2, the characters look very real. It's just like bringing another layer of realism to it would almost seem more difficult because you can kind of start from scratch based on a MGS1 character because they're so almost broken in a way, you know?
1から4にキャラクターをこう持ってくるときって、1はほとんどこう、なんていうんですか、無表情だったりしたのに、2はもうちょっとこう近いじゃないですか。で、もうちょっとなんていうんですか、レベル高い上にもうちょっとだけレベルを上げなきゃいけないみたいなのと、0から4にするのは、割かしこう想像ができるんですよね。でも2っていうもうある程度完成度が高いキャラクターをさらに4、PS3 の品質に持ってくるっていう、その難しさっていうか、そういうのがあるんでしょう。あんまそういうふうに考えないんですか？
どっちも一緒かなっていう気はしますね。
I think, it's both the same. Either you create something from Metal Gear 1 to 4 or 2 to 4. It's kind of the same level we have to create for MGS4. Of course, as you said, Ryan, there was a high quality during Metal Gear Solid 2. However, just a few years, but the world of CG has upgraded so much and have become advanced, meaning we have to live up to the high standards of today. So people who like say my mom, for example, compares MGS2 and MGS4. Maybe she can't really tell the difference so much, but a professional as CG artist, we have to impress these people saying, oh, this is a real good, real good detail thing. Having that said, I think there's no difference from 1 to 4 or 2 to 4.
I see. Well, this is probably the most sensitive question on the list, but it's from Mr. BL from the U.S. And,
yes.
And he wants to know what kind of ideas Mr. Shinkawa had. How did he get the ideas for the design of Raiden, the new Raiden in MGS4?
アメリカの BL さんからの質問なんですけれども、一番こう言いにくい質問かもしれないんですけどね、MGS4 のライデン、このアイディアっていうか、どこら辺からこうインスピレーションを受けたものがあれば教えてほしいと。
ライデンっていうキャラクターが出たのが2だったんですけど。
The first time when Raiden came up was in, of course, Metal Gear Solid 2. We have our internal checking system, monitoring center, we call it. But right before the end of MGS1, we did this checking and we got loads of feedback, and there was this one feedback that we couldn't forget was that there was this girl who played Metal Gear Solid and said that there's too many boring guys and I want
old men.
Yeah, old men, these old men, and I don't want to play this game. I want some cool looking, good looking male character. And of course we couldn't implement that in MGS1 because it was almost complete. So what we did was, we talked with, director Kojima and said that, okay, for 2, we're going to have this cool character. And then we came up with Raiden. But then that created, as everyone knows, anti-Raiden and those kind of people as well, saying that Raiden's too, feminine or, is not manly enough. So that's why when we then came back with MGS4 of Raiden's Return, we thought that we wanted to implement that kind of voices to Raiden. And also wanted to, the way he looks, we wanted to represent what Raiden had gone through. And that's showing in this current Raiden that we showed you so far.
I mean, are you proud of the work that you've done on Raiden for MGS4? Because, there was a lot of, anxiety before we showed off Raiden at E3 last year.
But a lot of people said, he looks so cool.
It turned out amazing. Yeah. And as you know, there's the PlayStation magazine in the UK. It's got Raiden on the front cover.
Right.
And that wasn't the only one. There's the EGM. I think it was the Mexican EGM that had Raiden on the front cover. A lot of magazines, all of a sudden, Old Snake's gone. It's Raiden on the front cover. Did you expect Raiden to be this popular?
これで MGS4 でライデンのトレーラーが流れた時とか、その後から、僕らも気づいたんですけど、UK の雑誌とかメキシコの雑誌とか、スネークじゃなくて、ライデンが表紙を飾ったりしだしたんですよ、MGS4 で。これは狙い通りだったんですか？そういうふうに予測してたんですかっていう。
予測はしてないですけど。
Well, of course, no, I didn't predict that this kind of thing would happen to Raiden after we showed him for the first time. But, as you can see, Raiden is almost like falling apart. His body is not like human anymore. The only parts remaining is probably his face, and also the spine actually is, is not man-made. But, this happened because we listened to a lot of people of criticism of Raiden when he appeared in MGS2, so we could express that he had gone through tremendous things. I think that worked out quite well.
Well, if you don't mind, I got two more questions for you. And first one is we're kind of going back in the MGS timeline to the 60s with Snake Eater and Big Boss. Mm-hmm. And there's a good question that came in that from Akash from US, and he wants to know about this evolution of Snake and Big Boss, and is it difficult to create these characters and work with them, even because they have the same, they're coming from the same genes, they have the same look to them, but they're entirely different characters, Big Boss and Solid Snake. Is that hard to approach? I mean, are you thinking about the personality and the innocence of Big Boss when you're making these characters, or can you talk a little about that process?
アメリカの明石さんっていう人から質問なんですけれども、はい、まあ今度ちょっと戻るんですけどね、スネークとかビッグボスとか、要はまあスネークって言われている同一じゃないけど見かけはまあ人が一緒で、似ている、非常に似ている、はい、そういう人たちを書き分けるときとか、まあ要は書くときに、どんだけこうなんていうんですか難しいかっていうか、その進化とかも含めて、このキャラはこうで、でもスネークじゃないですか。でもビッグボスかスネーク、ソリッドスネークかっていうので、どんだけこう苦労があったり影響があったり難しさがあったりするんでしょうかっていう質問です。
そんなに難しくはなかったんですけども、
for Snake, it's not really difficult at all. Like, for instance, MGS3, I had this specific image from Hideo Kojima saying that this time for MGS3, I want a Snake that is a little bit kind of a bad guy. So what I did was, this image was already set, so that he has this wild beard. He looks sharper, his eyes glare, and that kind of thing. So it's not, Snake is always kind of consistent in terms of image, and it's always set. I have problems with actually other characters because how to set the image is a much more time-consuming and difficult task.
Can you talk a little bit about those characters that you had problems with, particularly in Snake Eater?
例えばスネークイーターで、スネーク以外で、まあ今新川さんが言ったようにちょっと苦労したっていうキャラクター設定っていうか、キャラクターは誰だったんでしょうか？
いわゆる敵の
Well, actually, the bad guys, the bosses that came up in MGS3 was one of the most difficult to come up with drawings or ideas. This is because we deliberately didn't have actually so depth background to these people, because usually in days of MGS2 or MGS1 there was always this background, and remember these guys always kind of started talking about how they survived in Foxhound and how they were trained or what they went through and that kind of thing. That is really helpful to create an image of drawing. But this time, Kojima said, well, why not? The users will get bored when these people are going to die and talk so long. So why not we just kill them by explosion? So that was the concept, and they didn't really talk about themselves. So that was really difficult for me to come up with ideas.
I see. That makes sense. Yeah, I noticed that especially with Fury and the Fear. You kill them, and then they don't have a lot to say.
Yeah, they just say, yeah.
That's about it. Yeah. Well, let users move on. I guess that was the whole concept of not letting them get too long-winded. Well, last question for you. This is from Nomad from the US, and he wants to know what you think about Ashley Wood's art. And especially with the release of Portable Ops, it's become very popular. His art has become very popular, also in Japan as well.
Yeah.
It's been really taking off with fans. And everyone wants to know what you think of...
Yeah, the novel games as well, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 最後の質問なんですけれども、アメリカのリスナーから、ノマドさん。アシュリー・ウッドさんのそのアートっていうのはどういう印象を持ってますか？まあ、その理由の一つとしてはやっぱりポータブルオプスとか、バンドデシネとかそういうのが出て、まあ意外と日本でも人気が出たり、オプスとか人気出てるじゃないですか。だからそういうのを見てっていうのも含めて、アシュリー・ウッドさんの、作風っていうのはどういう印象をお持ちでしょうか？ I was actually a fan before we asked and approached Ashley to create something for us. So I was really happy with this. I think his art is really cool, and I really like his art and his drawings. And it's fascinating to know that he's a guy that really just loves to draw. And I had a meeting with him once, and I found out that he is really likes our Metal Gear world, and he really is into this Metal Gear. And we were, quite easily exchanged kind of concepts and that kind of thing. And it's very happy and almost proud of his works when it comes on when it came out on the PSP, because it's now moving. Ashley's drawings are actually moving, and that's really very innovative and surprising, and I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, I was surprised too when I first saw it in motion, when I first picked up the digital graphic novel. It's like, wow, this is incredible. I mean, does Mr. Shinkawa ever think it'd be cool to see his art get put into movement, into motion?
バンドデシネを最初見たときに、このアシュリーさんの、あれが、新川さん今言ったように動いたのを見て、ライアンもちょっと驚いてやってたんですけど、そういうのを見て、新川さんの絵も、俺もこういう感じで動いたらな、みたいな、そんな、夢っていうか野望っていうか、そういうのをこうちょっと思ったりしました。
そうですね。大変ですよね。あれはめちゃめちゃ大変です。
Actually, the first impression I got was like, oh, this must be a hell of a lot of work. That was my, what I thought first. I didn't think, automatically, oh, what if my drawing moved? But I got more inspiration of thinking, this could be a game of itself. So maybe I could create a game with this kind of technique or this whole new innovative thing. So that's what I thought.
面白いんじゃないかなっていうふうには思いますね。
Did you not think of that back in after MGS1 when you're working on MGS2? There's a it's not really a game, but a product that we put out on PS2 called the Document of Metal Gear Solid 2. And on there they have some early renders, 3D renders of characters with, it's called like the Shinkawa style 3D renders, where they try to put his art over 3D models.
Yeah.
And I guess that didn't really work out.
Right.
But I mean, is that something that he'd like to do in the future, or is that, I mean, what happened with the whole process, and was that just too difficult, or?
MGS2 のドキュメントっていうソフトがあったじゃないですか。その中で、3D モデルに無理やりこう、新川さんのドローイングをこう、重ねたみたいな試みがあったのを覚えてるんだけれど、その試みはどうしちゃったんでしょうかと、うまくいかなかったのか、それをさらにこう、研究進めてなんか断念したのか、そこら辺はどうなんでしょうか。
よく覚えてますね。入ってましたね、それ。
Big fan. もともと。
で、それは2の時、
First of all, I think you have a great memory of remembering that, Ryan. Yes, we indeed tried that. I think that was during MGS2, but actually when the PlayStation got upgraded, we thought that, our image or our drawing or our whole picture of Metal Gear has to be upgraded as well, because of the hardware's upgrade. We had that experiment, actually putting my drawings as a texture onto this 3D model. And we tried this. But I said before that my style of creating game is always thinking about the users really getting into that world. And I really want that live feeling to exist in the games that I create. Therefore, that drawing kind of thing didn't really kind of match this idea, my basic idea. So I wanted to make it more lifelike than using the drawing. So that's why we canned that.
Well, last question. I promise, last one.
さっきから3回ぐらいラスト言ってるんですよね。
But I really want to get this last one in because it's a fan. His name is Conceit Arturo from Colombia. Mm-hmm. And he asked a lot of good questions, and I want to get at least one of them in. Mm-hmm. And he's talking about the future. Mm-hmm. And for example, is Mr. Shinkawa interested in doing a different kind of job in the future? I mean, what kind of games does he want to work on in the future? I mean, is this it? Do you want to do Metal Gear 5, 6? I mean, what's going on inside his head?
ですね、最後の質問と、コンシエット・アルトゥロさん、コロンビアの人で、すごくライアンはなぜか、この人の最後の質問を入れたかったかっていうと、非常にいい質問がいっぱいあったんで、一つぐらいはちゃんと、新川さんに聞きたいということなので、その質問はですね、新川さんこれからなんですけれども、はい、これからは、どういうことをやっていきたいか、例えば MGS のシリーズを続けて、やっぱりそういうドローイングをしていきたいか、それとも、もし夢として全然違う職業をつきたいとか、例えば何でもいいんですけれども、新川さん自身の将来像としてどういうことを考えているか教えてくださいっていう質問です。
なるほど。そうですね。割とこういう質問があって、
Well, actually, I get asked this kind of question, many times, and I kind of always think, of course, working on game design and that kind of thing, games is in reality that still exists. However, just my pure dream, I think I want to create something design a vehicle, like whether it's cars or something, but something that you could feel and touch. I want to kind of design. This is because, I love cars so much, and maybe I think as a dream, designing a car and I could ride around, that'd be great for me.
もう本当にこれは夢です。はい。
And to wrap up this best of edition of the Kojima Productions Report is an interview I did with Hal Emmerich, with Audicon, with Christopher Randolph, who's the voice behind Audicon, and one of the most beloved characters in the Metal Gear series. So this was something that I took back in June 2007 with Christopher. It really just talked about the character of Audicon, how this character has evolved over the past decade, and how he's approaching this character in MGS4. So just take a listen. This is going to wrap up this best of edition of the Kojima Productions Report. We're presumably into 2008 right now, so Happy New Year. And we've delayed MGS4 to 2008, and I think it's going to be for the best. We're putting together something really special, and I can't wait for you guys to get your hands on it. So just thanks for being patient with us. Thanks for checking out the report, and just really appreciate all you guys' support. So here's to a great 2008. Thanks. Without revealing too much, I mean, how you feel about the project so far? Or?
Oh, it's very exciting. It's very, very exciting. I mean, thinking about what the technology was like when we started out 9 years ago, it's a whole other world what we're doing. And we've kind of come up in style. I mean, we're in much nicer studios to record this kind of thing, which is great.
Wait, last time you guys were not last time, but the first time was in a mansion. You can't beat that.
Yeah, no, there was something exciting about the first those first sessions, and we were all in the same room, and it was this little place tucked away in Hollywood, and none of us really knew what we were doing. We were trying to figure it out as we went along,
right.
The exciting thing about this, I'm finding, is that certainly for that one, and to some degree for the second one, the game was done already, and we were just sort of translating it into English. In this case, for MGS4, it's kind of being built as we work. So that's much more exciting for me. I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's a lot more stressful for me. I don't know if you can see the gray hairs coming out right
Yeah,
now.
I was noticing that. I can see you aging in the booth.
Yeah, because the game's not done, but we're still got to record these lines. And now, what level is this? And then where do you want Snake to go? And
Sure.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge. But I think in the end, it probably is going to result in a really alive thing when it's finished. It's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, it's very organic right now. I mean, we still have time to change things. So if things sound better for you to direct Snake in this area, we can definitely alter those things. So.
Right.
And I thought maybe I'd give the listeners a little bit of background on Christopher Randolph, like what you do outside of voice acting for Audicon.
Sure. I mean, I'm an actor. I've been an actor for, a long time, professionally, for coming up on 25 years. I've done a lot of theater work around the country and Broadway and off-Broadway. I've done a little bit of television, not a lot, but a little bit. I'm starting to do more film-type stuff these days, which is great.
So, I thought we'd just go into the questions, if you don't mind.
Please, let's do that.
We got a lot. I mean, I literally got over 200 questions from fans, and we really appreciate it.
It's great.
And especially from the guys over at the unofficial Metal Gear Solid site. You guys send in a lot of great questions. And let's start off with one question from Santiago from Argentina, and he wants to know how does it feel to give your voice to a game rather than doing your voice on stage, or like you're usually more communicating with people. I guess you can see communicating with the audience. And
yeah, it's a little bit trickier because, of course, you can't be seen. So anything that happens, you have to communicate solely with your voice. And that's challenging. And then the other challenging thing is that because we're recording this not having seen the game, sometimes you have to visualize in your head what's going on, and you don't really know.
Right.
And I mean, we rely very heavily on Chris Zimmerman, our voice director, for that, and she's brilliant. It's very, very helpful. On the other hand, there's a great deal of freedom in voice acting, particularly for games, because because you can't be seen, I mean, you can make all sorts of silly faces and stuff to just try and get the right sound, you know,
Right.
and it doesn't matter because no one's really watching.
Yeah, you could have a pencil up to your mouth and it doesn't really
Exactly, and I frequently do. And you also, you know, I did shave and take a shower this morning, but you don't have to. I
You
mean,
don't have to.
You don't
You
have
can
to
roll in
dress
here
around.
into
You
your
can roll in
pajamas,
here
yeah.
in your pajamas, which is fun. So that's great.
Yeah, well, actually, a first for the series is that, well, not this time, but we often record with ADR with visuals with the motion capture sessions.
Right.
And
Yes.
that's kind of a new thing, and I think that's really increased the quality of the performances.
I think so too, and I think the whole motion capture technology will increase the. I mean, I'm amazed. I saw that clip. I mean, it just looks like real life. It's like being inside an actual movie, and that's amazing. When we did MGS the first time, we did have to match things to picture.
Okay.
But it's not quite the same thing as this motion capture stuff.
Right.
I think that's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, actually, it's a little more severe this time, I guess. I mean, you could argue because you have to keep in mind the way that the motion capture actors are moving, and this is the way the intonation's going. Because it's not – we haven't made the game videos yet, but you're just looking at these Japanese actors playing.
I'm looking at the motion capture guys in the suits with ping pong balls all over them, and it's tricky.
You do have to use your imagination still, in a way.
Very much. Very much.
And it's funny because we actually put an effort in the Japanese voice or the Japanese motion capture actor for Otakon to have these big, thick glasses. So you do know that Otakon still is a little nerdy.
Definitely, and he always will be. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, with MGS4, he's grown up a little bit, but
yeah, I think so. I know. You know. Yes, I think he has. I hope he has. I think what's kind of cool about the whole series of games is the characters that progress over time, and I think that's great.
Well, that leads into a question from somebody with the pen name of The Red Comet, and he wants to. He says that Otakon is his favorite Metal Gear character, and he wants to know what your favorite aspects of the Otakon character are.
That's a great question.
Actor.
Yeah. And thank you I'm glad you like Otakon. I'm very fond of him myself. What I like, the two things that really stand out for me, and a lot of it has to do with the writing and the people who really created the game. First of all, he has a lot of humor. I mean, there's a lot of very funny stuff with Otakon, and I think that's great. I think it's really important to have a variety of things in a game like this. It's not all just blowing people away. And so the humor is fun to play. And the exchange with Snake, you know, that sort of the kind of relationship that they have that's developed is really, really fun. And then the other thing that I really like about him is he's got a big heart, Otakon. He really does. You know, the writers have really created a very deep and rich backstory for him. And, you know, he's had difficult stuff in his life, but he's very sensitive. And you know, he remains so even despite all the ways he's been battered around. And I think that's wonderful because, you know, as with so many things with this game, there's a commentary about the modern world. And, you know, I think sensitive, you know, intelligent people are really important, you know.
And he's perfect to be paired with a gruff guy like Snake.
Exactly. And that 1-2 combination, you know, you can pretty much do anything if you have both of those sides, you know.
And we have so much fun recording with you and David because it's just all the subtle humor is just so funny. The way that he bounces off you and the way that, you know, you try to get him to show a little bit of emotion sometimes and it doesn't work. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm very fond of David, and we get along great. So it's been a blast working with him.
Yeah. So going down to the next question is Mullet 2000, and he wants to know if you have a favorite scene that you acted in the MGS series.
Yeah. It's interesting. I was thinking about that. I mean, I have to say, I have a real soft spot for the very first scene where, you know, Snake kind of finds me hiding in a closet. I was thinking back to that, and I've actually seen a bit of it recently. And, you know, it's a good, interesting scene because there's there's a real fragility there. And then he starts to, starts to come out of his shell as he feels more comfortable, and it's a really great scene. So I'm very fond of that. And again, any time that Snake and Otacon have one of their exchanges, I enjoy that. Any of that humor. Also, there was a whole sequence in MGS2 where Otacon kind of took over Mei Ling's spot. Mm-hmm. And was trying to do all her sort of aphorisms, and he kept messing them up. I really enjoyed recording that. That was a lot of fun.
That would be a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
But yeah, that's when you're going back to that first scene where Otacon and Snake first meet, and Otacon asks Snake if he's alone. He says, "Are you an otaku too?"
Yeah,
and that's our classic line, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's. He's been isolated, and he's just looking for someone to connect with, Mm-hmm. And it was perfectly reflected in that line. It's really good writing,
Yeah, definitely. And that leads in perfectly into the next question, and this is from James in the U.S., and he says that it's a little bit of a long question, but Otacon's character becomes more complex in MGS2 when his darker emotional bruises emerged. And rather than hide himself as he did with MGS1, he dealt with his guilt and grief very openly, and he said he wants to know, how did Otacon develop in MGS2 change your perspective of his character, and how do you prepare yourself as an actor to perform these intense scenes, such as Otacon crying in the hallway? And he went through a lot of stuff in MGS2.
He did, and that's a great question. It was one of the exciting things about MGS2 was to look at what was written and really see an expansion of who the character was. And I think, he was a little older at that point, and we began to learn more about, obviously, what had happened to him and mm-hmm. what he'd been through. And I also think that as his connection to Snake had gotten deeper, he'd gotten a little tougher, mm-hmm. a little bit, mm-hmm. not a lot. And so he started to deal with some of that stuff. And you begin to realize, how sort of strong he is in some ways. As to, my preparation, it's funny because I remember very well recording that crying scene. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I didn't prepare a lot. You sort of come in and look at the script because even so, there are changes being made all the time at last minute. So mm-hmm. you can't get too prepared because you never know if it's even going to be that way.
True.
And so it's basically you just create a scenario in your head and you have to be open enough to kind of go there.
Right. I've seen interviews with actors and they say like some of them have like some kind of really, really sad memory that they go back to when they need to cry, or is that something that you do as well? Or
you can do that. I found, and I remember in this case, it's a very sad situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, this person that he loved, beyond describing, and also had a great degree of guilt over, and
mm-hmm.
All these complicated emotions about, was killed. I mean. I didn't have too much trouble just sort of taking the imagination of mm-hmm. what that must feel like and putting myself into it. And so in this case, I didn't really have to imagine too much from my own life. I was just able to sort of empathize very deeply.
Well, yeah, I think, at least with the approach with MGS4 is that, in MGS2, I think Otacon kind of became a man after that. I mean, he went through everything, and there's actually a very classic scene where Otacon's walking along with Snake, and he's picked up after EE's died and after his sisters died, and I think that's where he really becomes into his own. And then in MGS4, it's like this further maturation where he's still, like you said, he's still got these soft spots. He's still got a very kind heart, but he's a lot more worldly now. And but he will always be a geek, as Chris Zimmerman will keep reminding us.
It's very true. She keeps reminding me that, and that's true. But it is true in MGS4. I think he even gets into the action a little bit, mm-hmm. And I like that. Frankly, I don't. Why should Snake have all the fun?
That's true.
You know what I mean?